Hi, this is Liv Morgan, and you are listening to No One Knows, a deep dive podcast into the mysterious death of Joann Matouk Romain.
On episode 13, I left you with the name Bill Randall. Remember, if you didn't listen, please go back and listen. If you're new here, please start off at episode 1, as everything is going to be in chronological order. But today, I'm going to update you on a bunch of things. So let's get started. Trust me, I see all your Instagram messages. I see all your comments. I have a ton of questions that have come forward at a very high speed. So we're going to answer them here today, and we're going to start off just talking about the things and where we're at with Joann's case currently. Many of you have reached out in regards to the incident that took place in Grosse Pointe Woods with our billboard. Remember, our billboard was hit and struck at a high speed while it was parked, and there was no arrest, or is still no arrest that has been made as of today, Friday, August 23rd at 7:45 p.m. That is not the update I'd like to give everybody. I would love to say that there has been action taken on the individual who did slam into the billboard. It's been extremely frustrating because we had a perfect scenario of what happened, right? So we had somebody that was nearby that had saw the incident and immediately pulled out their smartphone, took photos. This individual has actually seen Billy Matouk Jr. around town in the Grosse Pointe Woods area, so they were familiar with his face. They came forward and gave a witness statement. We did everything we were supposed to do at the time that this incident occurred. And it's frustrating because for me, this is a podcast that is on the mysterious death of Joann Matouk Romain. So the billboard was here to promote Joann's case. In return, the individual who hit it was her family member. And I think we come back to this spot of like, everybody will always say, well, how can somebody's own family member put them in a predicament to where they could end up dead? Or how could somebody's own family member be so upset by the things that are on the billboard? And I think we need to remind people that the things we're putting out there are frustrating people. The information that we're putting out there all has facts behind it. I can't go and post something that doesn't have some sort of truth or paper trail to it. And I know many of you have come forward and mentioned, like, aren't you guys worried about a defamation case? Aren't you guys worried about certain, things that you're saying? And we have to keep some transparency with the podcast, but there are a lot of things that I cannot share due to keeping others safe. So when we come forward and we make a statement or we make a comment, everything has a paper trail to back it up, like I've mentioned. So for instance, when we are mentioning Tim Matouk on the billboard being accused of child molestation, this is something that there is a paper trail for. They talked to Michigan State Police. It came out during depositions. There was a lot of instances where I feel as though things were protected to try and protect victims in this scenario, but in return, it kept the individuals who were harming others safe, if that makes sense. But not to go too far on a tangent, I want to go back to the billboard. Like I said, as of today, Friday, August 23rd at 7:49 p.m., there has been no arrests that have been made. I have reached out directly to Grosse Pointe Woods on many, many occasions. I think I'm probably at 8 to 10 times. I've left probably 5 or 6 messages for Keith Wazak, who is the head of the Detective Bureau at Grosse Pointe Woods, when it comes to these individuals that are handling these cases, especially in such a small community where this individual like Keith Wazak has already been on Joann's case prior. He was brought in for a deposition. So now we're coming to him and saying, hey, somebody hit the billboard of the things that we're posting. His face has been on that billboard. So I don't know if his lack of wanting to help us is because A, they're listening to the podcast, B, they're familiar with what's going on, or see they're somehow in alignment with the Matouks. If I was to guess, it's probably a little bit of all of it. And the reason I say that is there's been instances where people have mentioned something to Grosse Pointe Woods police and it has come back as being said. And it was shared with certain individuals. And we will get into that. But bottom line is, in no other city could you hit a billboard in broad daylight on Mack Avenue and not be arrested. We had and have done everything possible. I truly believe that if I did not call down to the Wayne County Prosecutor's office every single day for weeks, they probably would have just dropped the case. And with that being said, now it was at the Attorney General's office and it is now being transferred to Macomb County. Now, there's an issue with this going to Macomb County, and I'm not sure if everybody will remember here, but Macomb County has a sitting judge who is Bill Matouk's uncle. Regardless of where this case goes, whether that be Wayne County, Macomb County, there are individuals who are within the Matouk family who've helped them previously in cases. So we're in like this rock and a hard place. I'm going to continue to be vocal. I'm going to continue to call the Attorney General's office, call the Wayne County Prosecutor's office, call Grosse Pointe Woods. I'm going to start calling Macomb. At this point, it's not just us. They need to hear from all of you guys. And I've been very vocal. Joann's children have been very vocal on the things that we can do. This is us asking you, if you truly believe that there has been an injustice in this case, in the billboard being hit and him not being arrested, I really urge you to make contact with the Attorney General's office, the Macomb County, Wayne County Prosecutor's office. Leave messages, write letters. You can do it anonymously. Make your voices heard because it's your tax dollars that are paying for the cover-up of all of the crimes aside from just the murder of Joann Matouk Romain. Now, in the process of me talking and currently investigating and looking into things, I want to make it well aware that I have also contacted the mayor of Grosse Pointe Woods. I initially did contact him when the incident occurred with the billboard and asked if it's something he could help us with. He did mention that he was going to help us with and kind of get some information on it. I did speak with him about a week and a half ago, and he informed me that at this time, currently, it was still with the Wayne County Prosecutor's office, and that he'd be willing to talk with me at a further time, but not right now. The conversation did not go, I would say, in any way that I would consider movement occurring. I plan on giving him a call back shortly and kind of just checking in. At the time that he did say it was still with the Wayne County Prosecutor's office, I was already made aware that it was not. It was at the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General's office was going to be handing it over to the Macomb County Prosecutor. So, if or when I ever hear back from the Grosse Pointe Woods mayor, or if I reach back out to him and I have different information, this will obviously be the first place that I update it. But before I move on from Billy Matouk Jr., I have a few things that I found in regards to him that I'd like to share with you guys. So when I was doing my digging, I came across something, and I've been checking to see if there's been a warrant issued. I will just continue to check if there's a case that's been opened or anything. I was looking under Macomb County Probate, and online there was a lawsuit between an asphalt company and Billy. It's odd because we have this asphalt company being listed as the plaintiff and then the defendant. There's another individual whose name I'm not going to mention because I'm not sure who they are. We have Billy's business on here, and then we have William Matouk Jr. as listed as the defendant, and then we also have the defendant listed as City of St. Clair Shores. So I'm like, I wonder what this is about. So I go up to the top. I'm assuming it says here, it's a business court. It's closed. The original file date was from January 27th of 2016. And it says it was a complaint. And then at the bottom here, it says dismissed. And I'm like, this is weird. And so I go up to the top and I'm like, case status closed, but Does anybody want to take a guess on who the judge was in this? I'll give you a second. I'm pretty sure it won't take you long. But the judge in this case happened to be Richard Coretti. If everybody recalls, Richard Coretti is the uncle of Billy Matouk. So Tim Matouk has a sister, Nancy Coretti, and Richard Coretti and Nancy Coretti were married at one point, divorced. They're kind of back together now, hanging out, whatever. So obviously they're very tight within the family on that side. So I just found it odd, and I sent it to, Michelle, Kelly, and all of them, and they were like, is this for real? Like, how can the sitting judge be working on the case? Isn't that a conflict? So it just goes to show you that it really wouldn't shock me if it went to Macomb County and somehow it was a judge that knew somebody that was put on it. But that's besides the point. It just goes to show you that these aren't coincidences that keep happening. They're actual scenarios that are happening. So I will update you guys as I know more with the billboard. I've spoke with the owner of the billboard company. He was also unable to get in contact with Grosse Pointe Woods officers. I don't know as of today if he's been able to get in contact with anybody, but as of less than a week ago, he was not able to get any sort of contact. He wasn't even able to get the insurance stuff situated with his billboard being hit. So at this rate, we're just going to continue to push forward. It is something that we will talk about as new updates come, but moving forward, I'd like to focus back on Joann, what we're doing and working on with her case, and how this little local corruption within Grosse Pointe Woods kind of plays a factor into Joann's case. So, in regards to the podcast and Joann's case, a lot of you messaged me on Instagram and saw that myself and Kelly were at the Macomb County District Court. A lot of you were like, what is going on? Does this have to do with the billboard? Is this Joann's case? What's going on? So long story short, there is a case that has come forward. It is not against me. It is not against Kelly, Michael, Michelle, any of them. It has nothing to actually do with the mysterious death behind Joann Matouk Romain. This was a PPO that was filed from Tim Matouk to John Matouk. Remember, John Matouk is Joann's brother. Tim Matouk is Joann's first cousin. The PPO, I was given the date and the time by John Matouk. He said, hey, I got this in the mail. I was served. If you guys, I can tell you guys everything that happens, blah, blah, blah. We went back and forth. I told Joann's children, I said, listen, we cannot go. We can get the information. We can, request transcripts of what occurs. And something kept telling me to go, to be honest. And I think I've mentioned a lot of times that my intuition with Joann's case feels very strong. I felt as though I needed to be there. I was not disrespectful. I was not rude. I showed up at the courthouse. I did not interact with anybody on either side, plaintiff or defendant. I walked in. I sat in the second to last row in the back with Kelly. I just watched and listened. And I feel as though because I have so many of you that are so supportive of this podcast and are so willing to help and share and contact, that was what I owed you guys. I owed you guys an explanation directly from my ears to my mouth on what happened in there. Something weird did happen, and I'm going to talk about it here. So we walk in, Kelly and we sit in the far back. I immediately see a few faces that are familiar. I've never seen these individuals in person, but we're also in a courtroom where there's a lot of cases on the docket for the day. So there's people on Zoom, there's people coming in and out, there's lawyers, you can tell there's people that are being represented, a couple recesses, things like that. The case between Tim and John, I think, was supposed to start at 11, if I recall correctly. And I don't think we started till about 20 or 30 minutes later. So I sat in the back for all of the time. Kelly and we didn't speak to each other. We really didn't interact. We just sat there and listened. I noticed a few people. So when I first walked in, I noticed to the right, a couple rows ahead, was Bill Matouk Sr. sitting. I did notice Tim Matouk sitting up at one of the tables. And then I noticed Joann Matouk walk in with his lawyer. They all sat down. I did notice there was some conversations that had occurred between Tim and Bill. I did notice John speaking with his lawyer. But initially when we walked in, I don't think anybody recognized us, or, they probably just, like I said, the door was open. People were coming in and out, lawyers, things of that such. So once I realized we had kind of started to make it further into the time than what they had scheduled John and Tim's case for, I realized, okay, we're probably getting to the end of the docket, things like that. So we stayed in the room. I don't recall where everybody went exactly. Some people came in and out, like I was mentioning. And then I noticed Tim walk over to Bill and they're talking. And then all of a sudden I see that Tim notices me and Kelly. And the shock on his face was very, like he was almost caught off guard that we were there. And like I said, that was not the intention. The intention was to sit in the back so I could present and make everybody aware of the things that were happening. I wanted to make sure that I could, with the things that I heard with my own ears, replay them on the podcast directly from my mouth, so that if something wasn't correct or something was incorrect, I didn't have to come back and say, oh, well, I heard it from this person who heard it from this person. I just wanted it to be directly from the courtroom to my ears, to my mouth, and here. Then the judge says the recess is over. They come back. The judge asks if they'd like to do their trial today. John and his attorney agree. They say, we have all the evidence, everything that we need. They start talking. Tim starts mentioning about the podcast and that these planes are flying and they're flying over his house and all of those things. I would like to make it very clear on the podcast, I have never hired a plane. My podcast has never hired a plane. I am not held responsible or any of that such to what a plane says in regards to or advertising for my podcast. And I say that for this reason. A lot of people want to find out who and what and why these people are doing these things, so that I feel like there can be some sort of retaliation towards them. And I'm not doing that. I'm not going to put people in a predicament to feel unsafe or that they are at risk for their business. I will always let you guys know and be 100% transparent. Obviously, we have given the information to the billboard, but I have never had a say-so or anything to do with a plane flying in the air. And I want to make that very well known. But during this, Tim, I see him open there was like a filing folder, and he's got writings all on the one side and writings on the other side. And, he starts mentioning, there's a plane that's flying over my house. There's a plane that's flying, near my marina where my boat is. There's a plane flying here. There's something here. And, John's lawyer mentioned, none of this has been attached to you. None of it. John has not seen you. He has not followed you. There's no evidence of what a PPO would be standing for. And the biggest concern that I had with all of this, and I had told John initially when I spoke with him, was the first thing I'd said was, you are aware of the circumstances that are put in place when a PPO is put in place. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I had said, I know that if somebody gets a PPO on somebody else, they are no longer allowed to carry a firearm. And I don't want this to come down to like politics or anything like that, because I know gun laws and all of that are very hot topic with everything right now currently going on in the world. But I do believe that people should have the opportunity to bear arms if they want to. And I think with the scenario where this case is so in depth with so many individuals, for the safety reasons of John, I do think that he should carry a firearm. And that was my biggest concern that I had said to him. I said, if you want to carry a firearm and be able to arm yourself in case a scenario happens, then if he gets a PPO on you, you will not be able to carry one. But then I started thinking, I'm like, okay. So they're talking about all of this. I'm sitting in the back with Kelly. We're listening. And then all of a sudden, I hear my name. And I'm like, did I just hear that correctly? And Tim Matouk is at the stand, and he's telling the judge that he now wants counsel because he wants to cross-examine me because, and his exact words were, Liv Morgan is in the courtroom and she's the one that runs a podcast on me, end quote. And I think he said it probably three times maybe. And I remember looking at Kelly and I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, for one, I was never served with a PPO. I was never asked to be at a courtroom. I was never asked to be at a hearing. I was never asked to be a witness. I think that they were caught off guard with the fact that John showed up with a lawyer. I showed up to be able to document the issues that have come forward. I wanted to be able to, in real time, tell all of you what was going on. So I looked at Kelly. I'm like, what is going on? This is like the first we start talking, and she's like, I don't know. So the judge says, okay, regardless of if you want to cross-examine somebody, that would be up to your lawyer to discuss. But for now, if you're saying you want counsel, we have to end this, and you have the opportunity to get counsel. So because Tim did mention needing and wanting counsel, everything ended right there. There was no going forward. There was no anything. I turned to Kelly and I said, we should probably leave now. I don't want to all of us walk out at the same time. I don't want to be in a position where I feel uncomfortable with these individuals. I don't want to stir any type of pot or anything. All I'm here to do is to report on something, and that's it. So Kelly and I made the choice to get out. We go back to our vehicle. I get in the vehicle. I was kind of shocked. I'm like, what is going on? How can I understand needing counsel, but as of today, Friday, August 23rd, I have not been served with any sort of paperwork. I have not been served for anything. So there has been a date that's been set for the next court hearing. I do not know if the court hearing will actually happen. I have a weird gut feeling that everything's going to be dropped. But as I learn and get more information, I will update here. I like to remind everybody that if anything ever happens to me, it was not a doing of my own. I don't know if it's the fact that I'm putting everything in one place. So we've said multiple times that Joann's case has obviously been covered nationally, locally, unsolved mysteries, but there's always something that's missing. And the missing piece tends to be when it comes to the information that can be shared. And a lot of times it goes back to legal teams and all of these things. I have no sponsors. I don't get paid to do this podcast. Every investigation that has gone into this podcast has been done by myself. Everything I've done for this podcast, I have done with the help of Joann's children and the help of all the legal documentation that has been taken into a court hearing and a court proceeding. So, with that being said, I will update you guys, like I said, when it's scheduled for mid-September. Like I said, I'm not sure if anything will come of it, but I will be able to give you guys more information at that time. If I am brought forward as a witness, I will state everything that I've stated here, the same in the courtroom. There's documentation to back up everything that I have said, and I really do appreciate everybody always looking out. There's been a lot of messages like, please be careful. These people are not, they're not good. They're scary. Look at what they've done to their own family member. And I just keep reminding everybody that they can silence one person, they can silence two people, they can silence three people, but they can't silence all of us.
I know who gave the girls the drugs, the fentanyl, cocaine. I'm like, who? And she says, Billy Matouk. I'm like, who the fuck's Billy Matouk? And she goes, you know, Bill Matouk. I know. She goes, you know, Tim Matouk? I'm like, no. She goes, Tim, he killed Joann. I'm like, who the fuck is Joann?